Ancient Philippine women, the power they had and lost. Before the Spanish arrived, Filipino women could divorce their husbands whenever they wanted. They owned businesses. They became warriors. They ruled as spiritual leaders. Then 1521 happened and everything changed. This is the story of what ancient Filipinas had and what colonization took away. Spanish colonizers who arrived in the Philippines were absolutely stunned by what they saw. Historian Antonio de Morga wrote that Filipino women were not subjected to their husbands and could leave marriages freely. Another Spanish friar complained that women here had too much liberty. Too much liberty. Let that sink in. These weren't European women confined to convents and kitchens. Ancient Filipinas negotiated trade deals. They inherited property equally with men. They decided who they married and who they divorced. At the top of pre-colonial society were the Babylons, powerful female shamans who communicated with spirits, healed the sick, and advised chieftains on major decisions. They weren't just religious figures. They were political power brokers. Spanish priest Francisco Colin wrote in frustration that these women held great authority and were more feared than the chiefs themselves. When communities faced war, famine, or disease, they consulted babaylans, not male leaders. The babaylans performed rituals, interpreted omens, and even led troops into battle. They were untouchable. Even male dadists feared crossing them because they believed these women could curse them or communicate with ancestor spirits. Here's what blows modern minds. Ancient Filipino women controlled their own wealth. When a woman married, her property remained hers. If she brought gold, livestock, or land into the marriage, her husband couldn't touch it without permission. Early Spanish records describe Filipino women as expert traders who dominated local markets. They negotiated prices, managed family businesses, and controlled household finances. The concept of a woman needing her husband's permission to work or spend money, that came with colonization. Women wove textiles that became valuable trade goods. They created pottery, they managed rice fields, and they kept the profits. This is the part that really shocks people. Pre-colonial Filipinas could divorce for almost any reason. Incompatibility, divorce, husband's laziness, divorce, abuse, instant divorce, failure to provide, divorce. And here's the kicker. When couples divorce, they simply divided their property and went their separate ways. No shame, no scandal, no being shunned by society. Spanish friar Pedro Chirino wrote with horror that women divorced for very trivial causes and that this was accepted by everyone. What he called trivial, they called freedom. Children from dissolved marriages were cared for by both parents or extended family. There was no concept of illegitimate children or fallen women. Society simply adapted. Princess Urduja, Lapu-Lapu's wife, who some accounts say fought at Mactan. The women warriors of the Visayas, who Spanish accounts describe as fierce as the men. Ancient Philippines had female warriors who weren't exceptions. They were accepted. Women who wanted to fight could train in combat. Some accounts describe women wearing battle tattoos just like male warriors, marking their victories and status. The Boxer Codex, a 16th century Spanish manuscript, shows illustrations of Filipino women carrying weapons and participating in warfare. This wasn't mythology. This was a documented reality. Then Spain brought Catholicism and European gender norms. Suddenly, everything changed. The Spanish installed laws from their civil code where women became property of their husbands. Divorce became illegal. Marriage was until death. Women lost property rights. They couldn't testify in court without male permission. The Babilans were hunted down, branded as witches, and executed or forced to convert. Their spiritual power was transferred exclusively to male Catholic priests. Filipino women went from negotiating trade treaties to needing permission to leave the house. The Spanish actually wrote that they were civilizing Filipino women by teaching them to be modest, obedient, and submissive. They took freedom and called it savagery. They imposed control and called it civilization. Here's the painful irony. Many Filipinos today believe conservative gender roles are traditional Filipino values. They're not. They're colonial values, the idea that women belong in the home. Colonial, that divorce is immoral. Colonial, that women need male authority. Colonial. Your great-great-great-grandmother, 20 generations back, had more legal rights than your great-grandmother under American or Spanish rule. Ancient Filipinas weren't waiting to be liberated by the West. They already were liberated until colonization took it away and convinced future generations that oppression was tradition. The next time someone says women's rights are Western ideas being forced on Filipino culture, show them this history. Gender equality isn't foreign to the Philippines. It's a homecoming. This is what colonization stole. This is what we're still fighting to get back.